Welcome to the Sysadmin podcast. All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Sysadmin podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Nate, and I'm joined tonight by both Jason and Charles.
Hola.
One of you, yeah, there we go. That's better. Okay, so how you guys doing? Charles, why have you not been on the show in so long? We have to call you out now.
I'm going to have to pull out my excuse book and see what I said the last couple of times. So
well, like
the
last 8 shows or so. That's okay. You're still beating Dustin.
Pretty sure I was in Portland for like at least one of them, maybe 2. Who knows?
Right. I mean, it seems plausible. You seem to be in Portland more often than I can reasonably justify. At any rate, right. So last week or 2 weeks ago when we recorded our show, I mentioned that I had some pretty interesting news coming up that I couldn't talk about just yet, and that was mainly because I hadn't told my employer yet. But now I have. I'm starting a new job, guys. At Red Hat. Freaking dream job for me. Yeah, you guys may have noticed that we've been picking up a little more influence, maybe not influence, but a little more banter about Red Hat. And that's partially because I've been paying much closer attention to them. This has been like a lifelong goal for me where I wanted to work for Red Hat. And the recent purchase of IBM made me kind of question that. Purchase by IBM made me question some of that. But now that that's settled, a position has come my way, and I took it. I'm starting as a TAM at the beginning of October. So, Charles, I don't know how that makes you feel, since I'm leaving the team that you now have to pick up the pieces on, but it's making me happy.
I wouldn't want to contravene YouTube's content guidelines by giving my actual views on the matter, so we'll just move on to the next topic.
That's right. So
wish you the best, but you're leaving us in the lurch.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm sorry. I guess that's part of the problem with so much dependency being put on one person on the team. I'm not going to say I didn't have anything to do with that, obviously, but things that just kept falling to me, and I kept making them work. So I guess that meant everything was okay until I had so much work on my shoulders that I was having trouble getting any of it done. But, well, at any rate, you guys might remember Marc from a couple episodes back. He actually came to me and said that there was an opening on the team he's on, and I'll be working with him. So it's going to be a good time. Hopefully I find as much success there as I did with Lafayette for so long. So, yeah. But it's given us...
So for the listeners that don't know, TAM that's a tap dancing animatronic monkey. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly what that is.
Okay. That's what I thought. Just making sure.
Technical account manager. So I will be part of...
Doesn't sound nearly as impressive.
Yeah. I'll be part of the account team for some number of customers, and I'll basically be like a technical extension of their team, right? So I'll be expected to learn sort of what these people or what these customers do, and what sort of software they're using, and basically help them use it better. That's what the role of a TAM, in a nutshell, does at Red Hat. I think Marc talked about that a little bit the night he was on. He loves the role. I guess we'll see how much fun it is. It sounds like an interesting position, in my opinion. So hopefully,
so you get to kind of go to the customer and look at them and say, "No, wait, stop! You're doing it wrong. Let me show you."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about tell them they're doing it wrong, but it's more like I have to understand what they're doing so that they can do it, so they can use Red Hat software most optimally, and of course help make sure they're getting the support they need and stuff like that. So yeah, it should be interesting, I think. But it's given us an interesting idea for a topic for tonight. So a lot of us work in IT, and we're in positions similar to what I just described, where the place you're working for has a lot of dependence on you because you're the technical expert, or because you're just part of a team that's overworked, maybe, and maybe you feel like you can't leave because they depend on you too much, or maybe you're just not sure if you should leave because you haven't been there very long, or whatever. So I thought maybe we would chat tonight about just leaving a job, right? When when is it okay to leave? Should you have any or should there be any expectations that you sort of owe an employer or anything? Um, things like that. So for me, I've been with Lafayette for 10 years, and the place I was at before that was like 2 years, right? And before that, I was at a place like 7 years. And each one of them, when I left them, I almost felt like I was disappointing them when it was time to move on to something better. And none of them really made me feel that way. Like none of the employers that I worked for enforced that. It was just sort of a feeling that I had. And I guess that's just me. I don't know if everyone feels that way or not, but so it's always been kind of a tough decision, even when you're at a job you don't like, which I've been, in that position in the past, where it's at a place where, you don't fully support what the business is doing, or you don't like the people you're working for, or whatever. You just have reasons for not liking what you're doing there, and but you still feel like obligated to be there. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I don't know where exactly I was going with that, but basically that's just sort of like how I feel about being in a position. I feel like I'm there to be depended on, and I feel bad for leaving a role like that. But on the flip side of that, life's only so long, guys, right? So if you've got a dream, or if you don't like what you're doing, or if you're stuck in a rut and you just don't like it, and you don't feel like there's any way to fix that at the current position, don't spend your life hanging out there working for someone that maybe you don't like, right? So,
No,
Charles,
agreed. I think.
sorry, I was going to say both of you, of course, have a work history, and I'm sure you've both left jobs or were fired from jobs or whatever over the course of time. So, I mean, go ahead and elaborate some. I don't know. I have this like fierce sense of loyalty to just about whatever employer I'm with, and maybe that's misguided. So I'm kind of curious, like, how do you guys feel about the same concept?
Yeah, Charles.
Well, I mean, at least for the jobs I've had, yeah, I've felt that sense of loyalty, and that loyalty was reciprocated. I think that was probably specific in some ways to the industry I'm in and the places that I've worked for. Um, and certainly the job I had prior to this one, where I was working for an institution where I'd also gone to college, there was kind of this double loyalty. Um, and it was actually kind of hard to separate out those feelings, being both an alum and an employee. That's easier.
Oh,
I was
right.
like, I'm just an alum, just
Right.
an alum now, and I can actually go back and enjoy being there as an alum, which is kind of fun. Um, yeah, what you say about not getting stuck. I think something to think about is you have to ask yourself, do you like what you're doing? Are you happy? And that's tough. I think to actually be able to honestly answer that question. I think part of you is going to say, well, yes. Well, I mean, of course I'm happy. And it can be difficult maybe to get an honest answer from yourself. Like, no, am I really happy? Like, do I like doing this? Do I like who I'm working with? Do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to still be here in some capacity and say 2 years, 3 years, what's 3 years down the road look like? Do I like, what is it I actually want to be doing?
Yeah, right. I mean, sometimes you're in a job because it's what you fell into, and especially I would assume anyway, in a situation like you were in, I assume you graduated from that college and then you just started working for them. Like, were you working there as a student before you graduated and then just carried on over into it, or was that a?
Almost. I had worked for them as a student doing various tech support kind of things, and so I knew some people in the department. Then I graduated, and I was going to take a year off before going to grad school. But I stayed around and had a kind of a temporary job with facilities at the college, doing home renovation and kind of fun stuff like that, drywalling. And then they needed a temporary employee that fall. I was still around, and they knew I was still around, and it turned into 6.5 years. A very different role from what I started doing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
that's one of those things. Yeah, I did kind of fall into it.
So I guess the point I was trying to make there was, since you sort of rolled right on into it, right? Because it was like I graduated, then I'm working there, and then I just sort of found a place where I fit. You may not have been doing exactly what you wanted to do, right? You're doing a thing that pays the bills, but maybe it wasn't what you thought you'd be doing.
No, I don't think it was what I would. No, it was not what I thought I was going to be doing, but I was certainly happy to do it, and I like my coworkers. I'm still in touch with some of them.
Yeah.
And of course, what I was doing changed over time, and I think part of the reason I wound up doing the job I do now at Lafayette is that eventually, in the end, I figured out at some level, from a work perspective, what it was I wanted to be doing, and realized that in order to be able to do that most effectively, I probably had to go work somewhere else for a whole host of reasons. Like I just wasn't going to be able to do that where I was. No reflection on them. I mean, that was just,
right.
I had to make a change in order to do that thing.
Yep. So, Jason, I know you have a very long and sordid work history. I don't know how you want to attack that.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Me? I don't understand. What are you trying to infer?
We should have had a guest host on tonight. You know who I'm thinking of? Danny.
Oh my God.
Danny could have gone on for half an hour just listing his work history.
Yeah, except he would have derailed the conversation for the first half hour.
He would have,
while he was in a car parked behind a dumpster at a
Costco or something.
Who knows? Right.
Anyway.
My work history is fun. So I don't quit jobs. Jobs quit me. I think I've mentioned that in the podcast before, but I tend not to. Well, I'm a long timer at almost every job I've ever had.
Yeah.
Moving past the McDonald's and Burger King phases, which are actually, I think, fairly long for that phase too. But most of my career, I've been in jobs greater than 5 or 6 years in each position. My last position was the shortest that I've had in, I think, ever. Which was 4 years, and that only ended because the company exploded into nothingness. And I can't work for a company that's not there anymore. So
yeah, it doesn't work.
So I tend not to job hop, but I do struggle with this a lot. I've been in a couple different jobs where things are questionable, which usually signals a period of time at which I'm shortly going to find myself unemployed anyway.
Yeah, right.
But I've had struggles where I've really questioned whether or not I really want to be where I am, and it's tough. I'm typically pretty loyal to a company, and if not to the company itself, I'm loyal to the people I work with. I've been fortunate enough to not really work at any jobs where the culture has been completely toxic and the people have been toxic. Not to say that I haven't worked with toxic people, but they've been few. So it comes down to me, it comes down to, sort of weighing back and forth what the pros and cons are. So, is the opportunity you're looking at worth jumping? Especially if you have a family, is it an opportunity that you can move to that is stable enough to be able to support the family and get benefits and all that wonderful stuff? Or do you have enough savings or, enough squirreled away that should you jump into something that's not stable, you can sort of support yourself?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to it.
On the not stable side, I guess you have a bit of experience there where I certainly don't. I don't know about Charles. It doesn't sound like Charles has ever jumped to a job he didn't think might be stable.
No, I mean, I've basically had two, long-term jobs. I've been in, now Lafayette, a little over 7 years.
Yeah.
Um, One before that, 6.5. And I like stability. It's something that I value.
Yeah,
Um,
there was a little web host I worked at, which looking back probably wasn't as stable as I would look for today. Um, I mean, they did eventually close, but they had been open for 10 years by the time I was working there. So I guess you'd call that at least some stability. But Jason, I know you were working at a startup. Like what?
Yeah.
You didn't have much choice at the time, though.
So,
You were out of a job and an opportunity came along.
um, well, there's always a choice. So yes, I was out of a job. I was unceremoniously let go from a place that we've all worked together at, and sort of banging around looking to see what I was going to do. Kind of taking a slow roll on it. I had enough savings that I could last a couple months and kind of try to figure out really what I wanted to do next. And this startup sort of pretty much appeared out of nowhere. I was chatting with a friend, and somebody who happened to be at the table was like, "Wait, what are you looking for?" And kind of laid out what I was looking for, and then they were like, "I'll talk to you tomorrow. I've got a position for you." I went, "Oh, okay."
That's handy.
And it turned out to be, a an immediate stage startup, as in they got their office space the month that I started in a WeWork.
Yeah.
Um, and the first um, 9 months or so were the work was there. Yeah, work was absolutely there, and the money was good when I got paid.
Right.
Um, and I was made whole pretty much throughout the whole thing, as it went forward. Fortunately, it was a financial startup. The people that were involved, for the most part, were people who um, apparently just had money falling out of every orifice and didn't have to worry about things like paychecks. So I was lucky enough to be one of the first on the list to get paid when money did come in, and it took almost a year to sort of stabilize to the point where we had actual uh, capital that came in to keep us sustained, and we turned that into a 4-year run. Um,
Yeah.
I won't go into the details of why it blew up, but I will say it wasn't
Yeah, I
the
don't think I
product.
would anyway.
It was purely a mismanagement situation.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And yeah, because if it wasn't for that, we'd still be going. Um, we had a product, and it could have gone a lot further than it did. So after that first year, it was stable, and I never really worried about where the paycheck was coming to from until like the last couple of months, which was another you know interesting ride. So I've been through the beginnings of uh, a startup. I've been through probably like the first two phases of a startup as it moves from like seed capital to VC to like raising funds through series raises. And I've been through the wonderful ride of watching it blow itself apart. So um, and during that, there was at least one or two times that the thought entered my mind of I'm not sure if this is the right place. Things are starting to go a little sideways. Maybe it's time to jump and go somewhere else. And it never really got to the point where I was seriously looking. And they sort of righted the ship and fixed the problems that we had issues with. And that was one good thing about it. But then at the end, I had to move, and now
Yeah.
I'm in a new position. So,
You didn't have
so
much
these
choice by
things
the
these
end.
things come up. Yeah, yeah, these things come up, and I mean, as far as jumping jobs, the one main piece of advice I would probably give is blowing up the job you're at without having a place to land is not the wisest idea.
No.
Um, I would argue that I don't the jobs that like I said, I've basically been fired from everywhere. Um, I don't purposely blow them up, um, at least consciously. Uh, so I'm not actively looking for something when stuff like this happens. Um, and I've learned a bunch of different lessons from the various things that have happened. Some of this is my fault, some of it's not. And I try to change as things move.
Right.
But
Right. I mean, nobody's perfect, right?
jumping without a place to land is jumping without a place to land is a bad idea.
Oh yeah, just like flip
said,
the desk and walk out. That's a bad move.
Yeah. So that said, the other piece of advice I would give is that if you are in a toxic environment and you are getting and it is affecting you mentally or physically, even if you don't have a place to go, it might actually be in your best interest to get the hell out of there. I mean, I know money can be tight and things can be rough, but staying in a toxic environment because you have nowhere to go it could actually be more detrimental than
I mean, I guess to some extent that depends on you, and only you can determine that, right? Like, some people are just really resistant to that. Some people are just eternally optimistic, and it doesn't matter what's going on around them. They're just doing it with a smile. And other people...
Right.
Other people really get drugged down by negativity, and that's not a good environment for those sort of people.
Yeah, I've only been in one environment where things got and I don't want to say the environment. I want to say management was toxic in this place. My coworkers were great, but the management piece of it was just absolutely toxic, and I got, I had to go home several times physically ill.
Wow.
And that's the worst situation I've been in on a job. That fear not, they fired me probably like a month later anyway for something completely unrelated.
I think I know which place you're talking about.
That was a firing that I went home and I walked through the door and my wife
like, honey, I've got good news.
And clearly, we had been married. I don't think we'd been married that long. Less than 10 years, probably more like 5 years. And she took one look at me and said, "You got fired, didn't you?" And I have never smiled so broad in my
never mind the fact that you're home in like the middle of the day, right?
Yeah, no, it was I'd come home sick before, but I mean, she just took one look at me and she's like, "You got fired, didn't you?" And I just cracked the biggest grin and I was like, Yep. And I feel like a weight has been lifted and I feel so spectacular right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's
that actually was good for me.
There's places that are just bad to work, and that's similar to the experience I had at that web host I was talking about. Now, I was only there about 2 years, and they, the guy who ran, it was a really small place, it might have been 10 employees. The guy who ran the place realized that folks like me were his bread and butter. Like, if we weren't there and we weren't doing a good job and we weren't happy, he'd sink, because like all of his customer base depended on us having a stable platform to run their websites on. And so I was treated probably better than most of the employees, but some of the others that were there, you could tell it was just not a good place to work. And that bled through even to me, even though I was being treated relatively well and being paid relatively well for the skill set that I had at the time and the point of my career that it was. So when I got out of there, it was just like, I mean, the job was stressful. Aside from all of that, it was stressful because we had 2 admins for like 100 servers, and these things were just falling over left and right, held together with duct tape and mailing wire, because he didn't give us any budget to keep stuff up to date and fixed and whatever. So, there was a lot of stress there, and I got to say, when I left there, I was pretty darn happy. So, I don't know if it's quite the same as what you were describing. You and I worked at the same place I think you were talking about, but my experience there wasn't nearly as bad because I wasn't in the same group as you. That whole place was kind of messed up.
No. Yeah, that there was a lot wrong there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gotten any better, but
it doesn't sound that way.
The job I had after that, is one of the only jobs I ever quit.
Yeah.
And that was just so a mutual friend of ours. So I had left.
Right.
I'm sorry. The previous job had booted me out. I started this new job, and a mutual friend of ours kind of came to me and said, "Hey, I've got a position open. You want to come join us?" And I was like, "But I just started this new job, and I kind of want to do things.
Kind of like it here."
and I hadn't really had a chance to like it. I'm not somebody who I want to give my minus a toxic environment. Like any job that I go to, I kind of want to give a good give it a good chance and sort of see what I can do there before I
Yeah.
jump. And I
Yeah.
had only been there a couple months. Um, and then some time down the road, that company got bought by another one. Um, and it's about the same time that he pinged me again. He's like, "Hey, we're still looking. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, but we just went through a buyout and new overlords and bigger company, and I think I can make a huge difference here. So let me see what's going on." And about 2 years after that, I had sort of run my course there and realized that large corporate companies are not something I can deal with. I don't really have any problem with anybody. I just like I don't like having to go through months of waiting to get approval on stupid things.
Yeah.
When I see that like the company's bleeding money on this, or this is being done completely wrong, or like I was a network engineer, and I had they were having issues throughout the network with some things, and I tracked down what it was and reported it. And the effort to get that fixed, which was like it was like 2 lines in a Cisco router, the effort to get that fixed took weeks of approvals, and this person had to look at it, and we had to make sure that this person's ego wasn't bruised, and this person needed to say because they're a VP. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but you've got customers that are down for weeks.
Yeah, that's
and
a
we're
problem.
worried about this guy's ego.
That's a problem.
So I believe I reached back out to our friend and said, "Hey, got anything?"
You still got that opening?
Yeah. And
he's like, "Well, you just wait."
I went down and interviewed. Yeah, I went down and interviewed, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is what I want to do." And they were like, "Okay, cool." And I went through my first panel interview, which was a really weird experience.
Yeah, interviews there were interesting.
And I joined up. Yeah. I joined up and off I went. What's interesting is that I found that the interview process there is not much different from the interview process I've been through since. So when I interview, I expect usually at least a half a day to a full day.
Yeah.
At the company
it's
I'm
not
interviewing for.
not just half an hour meeting with the boss in and out, right? So your experience there between your last employer and then the one you were just talking about brings up really kind of the final point for this particular thread, I suppose, would be when you started a job, is there such a thing as I haven't been here long enough to leave? Like you were saying, like you like to see what you can do there and get a feel for the place before you hop. Now, I have never left a job. I think the shortest I've ever been at a job. No, I lie. When I was in high school, I worked as a dishwasher for a day. That's my shortest job. Doesn't count for much, I don't think.
You didn't like washing dishes on.
But well, no,
your
it
wife
was.
Still complains about you not liking washing dishes.
It was. I was underage, and in PA here, underage drivers can't drive after midnight. Now, obviously, there's an exception if you're working; they'll let you drive after midnight to get home. But I was also still in high school, and basically, my parents were like, "You're not working till midnight, and then coming home at 1 a.m. because it was like 45-minute drive home." And then get up for school the next morning. We're not letting you do that. And they had me, the dishwasher, they're the last ones there. They're the ones cleaning the place up. So, yeah, that's why that didn't work out. But anyway, that web host that I was there for 2 years, that's the shortest real job I've ever held. And, I can't say that I would have noticed the negative side of that job in the first couple months I was there. It took me a good year to really start to see it, right? So, I don't know. How long does it take before you can say, this job just isn't for me? Is it a quick thing or not? I don't know that any of us on this particular podcast have that answer. But we can certainly try to talk it through.
Certainly I think, when I was at my last job, I did a lot of desktop imaging, and I had a lot of face-to-face contact, and I saw a lot of new hires. And it was always interesting to see how long people lasted. And there were definitely some offices that had notable churn. I think the record was the person who lasted basically 3 days
Yeah.
in an administrative position. It's like the story I was told was this person went out to lunch with the people they'd be supporting. They explained to that person the full scope of their responsibilities, and they quit in a panic.
They're like, nope, see ya.
So, nope.
Now,
But
we had...
that's the thing, right? You get read into a job slowly over weeks, months. You gradually pick up responsibilities, and you get a sense of what this job actually is and what you can make of it.
Yeah, we had, when I was at that web host, we had a guy came in to be the assistant sysadmin, or network admin, they call us, underneath me. Not quite underneath. We were more or less a pair, but whatever. He had worked at the place before and had left to go do other things, and then he came back because he needed a new job. He lasted about a week, and then he saw, basically the state of the hardware, realized it hadn't changed from before when he was there, and said he couldn't take the stress and left. I mean, he just couldn't take the idea that he'd be getting woken up at 2 in the morning, which happened quite frequently there. There wasn't much we could do about it as admins because we didn't have the budget. So yeah, I mean, I've seen it occur. It really put me and the host that I was working for in a bad spot because, we were short-staffed. That's the whole reason we hired him. And then he just abruptly left. I mean, he just, like, sorry guys, I'm not coming in today. I can't do it. And that's it. We don't have him anymore. So it really, because he gave no real notice, which is, a problem. So, yeah. But I guess you can get a feel for a place just by seeing who works there and seeing the general, like, the overall attitude of all the employees, right? Or at least the ones you work with. If they all seem very cynical and very, like, I hate this place, it's going to rub off on you pretty quick. So, I don't know.
But, at the same time, you got to give it time. Like,
yeah.
A story that's only grown in the telling is, we hired a new web developer last year, and we began onboarding him basically in the middle of that incident we've discussed on, you previously discussed on the podcast.
Oh, right.
The oopsie. So, we hire this poor guy, and, the first month of his employment, we're busy trying to put out this
everything's on fire. He walks in and the whole place is burning.
Yeah.
I forgot that
this is in no way indicative of it's in no way indicative of the normal state of affairs. It's just how it happened to work out. So you have to give a job some time, if you can afford to give it time. I mean, if you feel the urge to run screaming, maybe listen to that quiet, nagging voice. But,
Yeah, I guess I couldn't have blamed him for thinking that we were not a great place to work, having started in the middle of that. I assume that you and your coworker did your best to calm that.
I have no idea what we said. Knowing us, it's entirely possible it was all gallows humor. But he's still here.
Yes, he is. He is. And working out pretty well, I'll say.
No, we're not going to embarrass him, but
yeah.
No, I mean,
I don't know that he listens to the show. I gave him a sticker, but I don't know if he actually listens.
I don't have a sticker.
I mean, well, I'd say I give it to you before I leave, but I'm not going to see you next week.
He's been saying things like that a lot lately, and I'm starting to doubt some of these things are going to happen.
They're literally right over here in my bag. I'll get one and I'll show it to you. Oh, you can't see me. Never mind.
So I want to turn that discussion around for a second. Just touch on one other aspect. I think has kind of come up during the discussion. I just want to put a pin in it. You can find yourself in a position where you feel like you're an indispensable part of an organization, and maybe you are.
Mm-hmm.
And as hard as it is, I don't feel like you can't let that be a factor in a decision to take another job.
Yeah, so
like if you're indispensable to an organization, that's ultimately the that's kind of the organization's problem.
Yeah. So that
And
web host that I left.
you need to feel like you can get up and leave.
Yeah. The web host that I've talked about several times now. When I left, they lasted about another 2 years. And they went through a string of like 4 different admins in that 2 years and ultimately closed. Now, I don't have such a big head as to think that my leaving brought that on, because they did have a lot of other like sort of mismanagement problems. But I do wonder sometimes, like, had I stayed, would I have just ended up unemployed, or would I have been the catalyst that helped them stay afloat? I don't know. I can say with some certainty that Lafayette's not going anywhere because I'm leaving. So, it might be a hard time for the IT folks, until you get beyond all the stuff that really rested on my shoulders. But I think you guys have a plan for that, and I think it's going to go fine. And to be honest, if it really comes to it, give me a call. Like, I'm not going to turn you away.
No danger of that. But, it's funny. It's amazing how quickly you forget when you move on from a job.
Yeah.
Like, I said similar things when I left my past college, and for the first month and a half, there's the occasional email like, hey, do you remember about this or that? Just things that I hadn't been able to document before I left, or where the documentation didn't have enough to say. And, pretty quickly I got to the point where, like, I'm sorry, I'm just,
I don't
remember anymore.
I've moved on.
I'm not dealing with it every day.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with it every day.
Yeah.
It just, there's a lot of that information that's basically, it's in your head because it's immediate, because you're interacting with that job pretty often, but it slips. So also, if you're planning to leave a job, please consider documenting the things you do for the benefit of current and future coworkers.
I tell you what, all I can say is I hope Red Hat does not run MediaWiki, because I'm getting tired of looking at it after the past 2 weeks. I've been doing nothing but updating documentation for the past 2 weeks.
What is this documentation you speak of?
Yeah, right? It's foreign concept.
Is that something new that you have there?
Listen,
I remember that when I was there.
I still
we're still using some of yours.
I still come across some of the stuff.
Then I apologize.
I still come across some of the stuff that I inherited when you were fired, man. That I'm like, how is this done again? And I can't find your docs on it. So
you can ask. I might remember.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, well, I only go one deep, so I mean, once you leave, nobody can call me about anything because
Oh, okay, that's fine. Sounds good to me.
It's not non-transferable.
Non-transferable. All right. Well, I hope that was an informative discussion. We kind of just trail all over the place. We're not like career experts here. We're just talking from experience. So hopefully somebody out there who's in a job that maybe they love but might think they're destined for something else, or in a job they just hate and they're not sure they can leave. I hope that helps you. Life really is, I mean, you only got so much time here. Don't spend it in a job you hate.
And if you do find yourself in a position where you actually need career advice, I do know some people that can potentially help.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out and I can put you in touch. I know some absolutely amazing recruiter types that are both career advisors and recruiters, and have really good information about resumes and other stuff. And they've helped me out quite a lot. And they're just awesome people.
I mean, speaking of that, we could probably do a whole episode on building a decent professional network. Like I said, this job that came to me from Red Hat, I don't think I'd be here, accepting a job at Red Hat had I not met the right people over the years and had the right conversations and impressed the right folks. Like coming in off the street and dropping a resume, even if it's the best qualified resume in the world, if they know something about you other than that resume, it's always going to, look better on you. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and play that transition music and get on into the show, the rest of the show. So that was fun. All right, so I'm going to give you guys the usual Patreon update that I've been trying to do each show. Patreon, I don't think it's changed since our last show. Still $57 a month, which is cool. Much better than it has been for most of the show. It picked up about a month or two ago. We've got 8 patrons in all, 2 of which are the people who are co-hosting right now. And the rest of them are Julius, Andi. Oh, no reward. No, wait, sorry, that's not a person. That's a heading I didn't take out. Hang on. Let me fix that. Hey, what? Stop trying to edit while I'm doing it.
We're going to do it live.
We're going to do it live. Okay, I'm going to start that over again. Julius, Andi, Marc, this guy 22532, DeMentor, and John. So thank you, folks, for giving to the show. We very much appreciate it. I am tinkering with Kubernetes on DigitalOcean, and I'm hoping to move the Iron Sysadmin site into that, along with 1 or 2 other things that I already host on DigitalOcean for a little more resiliency. Last time on the show, I was talking about how I run these things on a very tiny DigitalOcean droplet just to save money, and it runs out of memory pretty frequently, and literally the next day it had run out of memory. So I'm hoping I can improve that situation and learn Kubernetes at the same time, because it's something I've always wanted to poke at.
You can fix that. You can fix the memory problem with a shell script and a cron job.
I could fix the memory problem by just spending, instead of $5 a month, $10 a month. But yeah, so that it'll move me from the very low cost DigitalOcean droplet that I've been getting by on to up to like a $30 a month bill, because Kubernetes needs more than just a single host. But the $57 a month will cover that, which is great. So that's cool. All right. Any other announcements? Looks like you got stuff in here about BSides, Jason.
Yeah, so the long-awaited BSides Delaware registration is now open. There's a link in the show notes. The call for papers is open. There's a link in the show notes. We're also looking for volunteers. Just hit me up on the Twitters, and I will get you to the right place, because I don't know where the link is for that off the top of my head. But this is our 10th year. We're hoping to do some fun stuff, and it should all come out. So November 8 and 9 this year. And same place as last year at Delaware Technical Community College.
That's cool.
So, fun time.
All right. No new reviews since our last show. I went and looked around a bit, and I guess, Jason, you have that review service. Nothing came into that, I assume?
No. We need reviews, people. Come on.
Yeah, more reviews. We like the reviews. We like to hear from you folks. We like to know what you like and what you don't like. Otherwise, we don't know what to change. Maybe that just means we shouldn't change anything, because we're doing everything awesome. Except when we mess up the headings in the Patreon update. All right, so I guess I already mentioned what I've got going on. Switching jobs and all. I've been crazy busy trying to tie up loose ends at my current job, and then plan. I have to actually go to North Carolina for new hire orientation at Red Hat's corporate offices. So that will be next week? No, the week after next. Losing track of time here. It's so freaking busy. That, and on top of all my various family things that are going on, it's like the last 2 months have been a complete blur, guys. You guys have anything fun going on? Any cool projects?
Yeah, I continue to work on the. Oh, they're not.
They're gone.
Work on the shelves.
The shelves are gone.
Well, so they were in so that I could measure them and make some adjustments, and then they're back in the garage. I've got the bottom shelf is done, and that's ready to be installed. And then the first shelf, because we started 0, it's an array.
Oh, right.
So shelf number 1 is almost complete. I put I gotta do a final coat of poly on the other side, and then do the final buffing of the of it, and then that'll be ready to put in, and then I go to assemble shelf number 2. So doing that, and then I got some new toys today. Um, so I'm gonna be a thermometer person, thermostat person.
Oh,
So I
you got
got
a
a
Nest?
bunch of
Is it a Nest?
no, it's an Echo Bee.
Oh,
Um,
what the hell's an
so
Echo Bee?
same idea. Echo Bee is one of Nest's competitors. So
Yeah, you would
same
never
idea.
you would never buy a Nest. I don't know what I was thinking.
Um, so now the project becomes the couple of places where I can run wire, I will, and the other place I'm going to learn how to use this thing that um, basically carries power and splits wires and does all sorts of neat stuff to get the signal up to where it needs to go. So that's going to be over the next couple of days, I think.
That's cool.
And then I will move from the old 1900s thermostats to the 2000s smart stuff.
Yay, smart thermostats.
Yeah. I mean, we have the Mercury thermostats now, which I mean, you turn them up and you get hot, and you turn them down and you get cold. But they're not. I don't find them very good at keeping a constant temperature. Um, they're a little bit uh, too much of a coarse change. And we put an early model smart thermostat in the old house that we had, and it the change in the constant temperature of the house and the change in the heating bill was immense. So I think it's worth doing. So this will be fun.
Cool.
And my army has arrived. So
Your army? Oh, you got the ducks.
so this is the best. So I ordered ducks that came in today, and then another package came in as well, and I had no idea what it was because I hadn't ordered anything, and it had a gift receipt in it that said, "You know the rules," and I was like, "What the hell is this? I didn't like. What is this?" So it's this nondescript gray bag,
Okay.
which is another 100 ducks.
What?
So the master of the duck army sent me ducks to distribute.
Oh, so you didn't
I've got to get busy.
you didn't just go buy ducks.
I had, and then I was surprised with additional ones. So I've got now twice the size of the army that I started with.
It's funny. I was about to go buy some ducks. So I guess when I buy ducks, I have to make this a public thing, and then I'll get more ducks. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. Yeah. I suspect I know who sent them, but I don't actually have a name.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Is it creepy that they got your address somehow?
If it's the person I think it is, then they already had my address from a previous thing that
Okay.
they had sent me. So
Okay.
so not as creepy.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it's not them, then what the hell?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, he's a public figure. Jason Street's been talking all about the ducks in his neighborhood on Facebook. He and I are friends on Facebook. The Face. And I'm trying to convince my wife that we need to get some ducks so that when we go out on walks, we can also put them around our neighborhood as though he has been. Because
Amazon.
yeah, I know. You can get like 200 ducks for next to nothing. I mean, it sounds like he's having so much fun, and his neighborhood is just playing along so well.
Oh yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. So. Yep.
Buy ducks. I have to go buy ducks.
Yeah, I gotta find a link to this duck army thing and put it in the chat.
So Charles, what have you been up to? Anything fun?
Well, I have no duck-related stories, unfortunately.
It's been forever since you've been on. There has to be something you've done in the past, like, 6 months.
You'd think that, and yet, well, so I've been noodling around with I don't know if I'd mentioned this, playing with this static gallery generator called Thumbs Up, because I'm looking for an alternative to Flickr. And so what's cool about it, you have a hierarchy of files. You make sure that you've written your metadata like title and tags as into the files as EXIF data, and then the gallery generator will just spit out this whole massive collection of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which you can then go park in an S3 bucket for pennies. And then you've got this pretty nice looking gallery site. It's got Lightbox integration with OpenStreetMap via Leaflet.js, so geotagging if there's
cool
longitude and latitude in your images. Yeah, I'm really happy with it.
It sounds interesting. Simply, I mean, the gallery problem is a thing that I just gave up on and started using Google Photos for because, whatever. I used to run the old PHP gallery. I think you and I have had this conversation before, and that's like woefully out of date now. They changed the way that they run it, and it doesn't serve the same purpose the purpose I was using it for anyway. It didn't do it as well anymore. So, yeah, I kind of stopped using it, and then I didn't have a solution for a while, so Google Photos it is. Mainly because I was
my thing was
I was so into the Google ecosystem at the time that I was making the change. So,
and my thing is I just wanted to have, this is just kind of a publishing repository. I still have my local archive, but I wanted to have control, and I was tired of moving things. I was tired of being dependent on somebody else's tools, and I don't object to paying. I had to go to Flickr Pro because of the price change. I don't object to that. I mean, but just it got me thinking, can I come up with an alternative that's acceptable?
Cool. Hang on, I'm adding a link to where people can buy rubber ducks to the show notes. So, folks, you can buy rubber ducks right at this link I'm pasting in the show notes.
which will help because we need to spread the army.
We have to spread the rubber duck army. All right, so I think that covers the chat. Let's move on into the news, huh? What do you think?
Sounds like fun.
All right, our first article of the evening comes from Forbes. You might remember we talked about this, it might be a year and a half ago, about Microsoft and their they want to get to 1 billion devices, right? They said they want to get to 1 billion devices by, they said 2 to 3 years, and that was in 2015. There was an update to this, I don't know, like 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, we talked about it on the show. Well, now they're at 900 million. I just thought this was a fun little update to the previous article that we talked about. You got to remember that in the past year and a half since we talked about it last, they killed off Windows Mobile. So you got to imagine that would have hurt their numbers. Maybe not a lot, but there were Windows Mobile devices out there. And there haven't been any real huge influxes of Windows users. It's just been steadily growing. For comparison, though, and the article says, it calls this right out in the title, Microsoft hits a major Windows 10 milestone, but there's no catching iOS or Android. And these are the numbers that actually really surprised me. So it says 1 billion active devices is nothing to scoff at, but it is a far cry from some other mainstream operating systems. Apple recently revealed that there were 1.4 billion active iOS devices. That's just iOS. That's not even laptops. That's not macOS. That's just iOS. And Google has 2.5 billion active Android devices. I, for some reason, was unaware that, hey, I woke up my Google device. Shut up, you! all because I said the word Google. Shh.
Right. So I wonder. So the Android devices probably probably encompass, you get phones, you get tablets, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of other devices that have Android in it as well.
Well, the thing
A lot of
I was
IoT
thinking,
stuff and different things like that.
the thing I was thinking was that iOS has a higher price point, right? So a lot of people, especially people who are outside of the U.S., probably depend on Android devices because they generally have a lower price point. So that's probably how they got to the 2.5 billion. Just because, Apple makes a good device, but it is a much higher price generally. So that's probably it's probably just a question of affordability. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're better one way or the other. It's just there's a lot more of them. I was always under the impression that iOS had more devices in the wild, and that's why it seemed like a lot of applications and whatnot supported iOS before they supported Android. But this number doesn't really support that, so maybe people Apple better.
Look, I figured Android would have more. And they've got 2.5 billion devices and 3.5 billion versions. So,
got a point there. All right. The next one is from, it says CNBC in the URL, but this must be like some division called Make It. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that's what's in the banner at the top. Anyway.
Oh, it's their business
okay.
Division, I guess.
I included this mainly because I think it's just awesome and terrible at the same time. Apparently, you can now apply for a job at McDonald's using an Amazon or an Alexa Google Assistant. Wait, Amazon or Alexa. Amazon, Alexa, or Google Assistant.
Yep, so let me help you out. Alexa, help me get a job at McDonald's. Okay, Google, talk to McDonald's, apply through. I feel like Alexa's going to get more love on this one because the Google one is just hard to say.
It is hard to say.
Yeah, that's apply through.
It's got me.
That's the name of the thing. That's okay. I mean,
but yeah, I mean I would be curious the adoption numbers for Google's Assistant devices versus Amazon Alexa. It's another case where it feels like the Alexa is everywhere. And the Google Home is definitely out there, but it seems less, like there's less of them. I don't know. Of course, I have a Google device, as you just heard me trigger it earlier. So it's mainly because I always root for the underdog, I guess.
Alexa is everything, including the twerky stuffed bear.
I know, I saw that! Bear. What was that? Freaking ridiculous!
It's one of the new Alexa device that it was at the whatever it was.
But why? Why do you need it? Well, why not?
You shouldn't be dissing our furry new twerking overlords.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean this is neat, I think. I am curious what the workflow is like, but I'm not about to apply to McDonald's to find out. I'm like curious. Does it quiz you? Does it ask you for all your information, or does Google already have it and they just send it along?
Just think. Now you can apply via Alexa or via your Google device, and then both McDonald's and Amazon or Google will have your social security number, your work history, all those good things. It'll be great.
But what? I mean, seriously, what could go wrong there? That seems perfectly fine.
Nothing. But this is, so this is also in addition to McDonald's is putting together AI powered voice activated ordering kiosks.
Yeah, we chatted about that on a previous show.
Yeah. So when we go through the drive-through, we can, okay, McDonald's, order me a hamburger.
Perfect.
And I just want to see. They have to keep the scratchy voice thing.
Oh yeah,
I mean, anymore.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it wouldn't be McDonald's. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd probably get a modulator for that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
You drive up in the eyes.
I mean, it's like people who make home video game systems, and they have to put in a monitor that either emulates or causes the same scan lines that they had in the arcade. Otherwise, it doesn't work right. Otherwise, it's not right. Right.
Yeah. No, screw that.
Yeah, right. It's like, come on. We've moved beyond this. All right.
I'm okay with a button I can press so that I can go, nostalgia, and then flip it back and go, okay,
Yeah,
now
right.
I can
Okay,
see the
now
game.
I can see without getting a headache. Thanks. All right, so our next article comes from Silicon Angle, which, I don't know, I've never heard of these people before. It came up in a Google alert that I have set up to prepare for this show.
How could you not have heard of them? They're the voice of enterprise and emerging tech.
The voice.
It says so right on the top of the page.
The voice of enterprise and emerging tech. In those brackets, though, the hard brackets made it like I couldn't read it because of that. Anyway, so Red Hat Ansible enables enterprise security to fight fire with fire. And the article goes on and gives you some backstory about how the bad guys are already using automation and yada, yada, yada. But the guts of the article is really about how a lot of companies, as I'm sure all of us are aware, they'll deploy a whole bunch of different security tools that maybe don't talk to each other well. And, so like they'll have their SIM and they'll have like their AV and they'll have all these other things that either respond to threats or detect threats or whatever. And this article is basically talking about how, did they say Red Hat or was it just that it's Red Hat software? Yeah, it is Red Hat. Red Hat is looking to help use Ansible as the glue to put all of those pieces together, right? So Ansible automation between all of these various pieces could make, the alert that triggered in Splunk go, respond to something on your firewall or in your SIM or something. So I think it's just kind of neat. It sounds like a good use of automation to me. So I don't know. It's kind of neat, so I threw it in there.
Yeah. Can you believe this, Charles? That he hasn't even started this new job yet, and he's already shilling their software.
Totally. Because we've never, ever talked about Red Hat on this podcast before.
I just hope that we're going to start rolling in that sweet marketing money.
Yeah, maybe Red Hat will buy Iron Sysadmin. Wouldn't that be cool? Or sponsor us or something.
Hey man, you can't put a price on integrity.
Right. So,
in all seriousness, yes, the automation of the security tools is neat.
Yeah, right. I mean, come on, that's cool.
So, yeah. So I mean, the prop that there's this whole automation thing is wonderful for things like the CI/CD process and making sure that you're compiling and deploying exactly the same way. It's great for repeatable processes. My concern is when you start dealing with security, and there are definitely bits of security that should be automated. I mean, if you think of the, and I'm going to choke, the DevSecOps movement, which I think is a big cop out. But
what are you talking about?
If you go down that security is supposed to be part of it from the beginning. We don't have to put it into the stupid title. Anyway, that aside, if you think about like a CI/CD process, like automating the static analysis or automating the dependency analysis and like all those things, like that's stuff that absolutely you should be using automation for that, whether it's Ansible or Puppet or Chef or whatever other instance, Salt, CF Engine if you're still living in the 80s. That stuff is great, but when you're dealing with like a security threat and an active security threat, I'm not fully convinced at this point that we have automation that can react to that in a way that is viable, because especially if the attackers know that there's automation behind it, you can trigger it once, see what it does, and then, well, now you know how to get around it because you saw what it did. So I think there's, it's cool, it's neat. I think it's moving forward, but there's a lot more to do.
I could imagine. I mean, it's still going to be useful. You're right. A persistent attacker is going to, learn what's going on there and work around it. but I think like your average, like I'm brute forcing your WordPress login, like that's an easy thing to pick out and say, you're a bad guy, we're going to block you. And that person's just going to move on to the next site, you know? So you're right. It's
right. No, and that sort of automation's been in place for, I've been doing that for,
yeah.
I don't know, the longest time.
Yeah, but so like just blocking them on your web server that's running WordPress, sure, that's a thing that's been really easy to do with something, a tool like OSIC or whatever, forever. Maybe not forever, but for 10 years already, which in IT terms is practically forever.
Yeah, yep.
But taking that information and blocking them more globally. Like, this guy's attacking WordPress, it means we don't want him on our network at all. Block him at the edge.
Right.
Like, that's a thing that's not as easy to do. But with automation tools, that becomes a lot more attainable.
Right.
That alert triggers an Ansible playbook, which goes onto your Palo Alto and says, this IP can be blocked everywhere. Don't let them into our network for anything.
Right. Yep, that sort of stuff might be useful.
Yeah.
Until they can spoof it and,
Well, yeah, I mean, everything has its limits.
Yep.
All right, so moving along to our next article. This is from CRN, News, Analysis, and Perspective for Solution Provider. Whatever. Did you hear about the AWS billing error?
Actually, no.
No, neither did I.
Did.
I didn't hear about it either until when I was collecting stuff. I actually found a follow-up article about what did the AWS billing error mean to customers? I'm like, wait, billing error? So I looked it up. And apparently AWS made an oops and charged some customers up to 3 times what they were supposed to. Which, I mean, personally, my AWS bill is pretty darn small because I don't do much there. But I can imagine someone who's spending thousands all of a sudden getting 3 times that.
Yeah, that's this harkens back to the various different times that companies like AT&T have done similar things. You get a $6,000 bill and you go,
yeah,
what? It's a phone line. How does that happen?
Yeah. So
these things happen. I'm sure it was a screw up in automation somewhere.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm sure this isn't like someone's trying to eke more money out of their customers or something. It was obviously a mistake, but it is, a pretty big mistake when you think about the scope here.
Yeah. So if as I'm reading through this, it looks like what happened is they started charging more running hours for an instance than there were in the month.
Yep, that's what I'm getting out of it too.
So which is it's probably a rounding error or an off by one error or something goofy like that.
Everybody go double check your AWS bill for September just to be safe. All right, and our last article for the night. I don't think I have either. Mine is literally like pennies because I think all I have up there is a little bit of storage on S3, and I don't have any running instances at this point. Anyway.
Yeah, and I do my DNS through there because it's really super convenient. So my bill is like $2 a month.
Yeah, and practically free DNS.
Yeah.
So our last article for the night comes from Ars Technica. This is an interesting one. Did anybody get a Chrome update recently that maybe bricked their Mac?
Yes.
No, I stopped running that crap a long time ago.
Yes to the first, no to the second.
I haven't run Chrome for a while. I do keep it on my machine, though, because there are times when it's handy to have a second browser. I did not fall prey to this, but... so, Charles, you brought this one up. I don't know if you read the article more deeply than the rest of us did, but you want to take this one?
Well, I mean, so there's a really fascinating subtext to this that I don't feel like getting into. But so, since like El Capitan, there's the system protection feature. I forget the exact name. Basically, the root file system on your Mac is protected.
System integrity prevention.
Yeah, so the root part of your file system is protected, and you have to go to some lengths to actually modify it. Like just
Wait, they typoed it. So sorry, I don't want to derail. Think about the what I just said.
And yet you're gonna do it anyway.
System integrity prevention. Doesn't that mean I'm preventing system integrity?
Well, I mean, in this case, yes.
It's actually called system integrity protection. The article typoed it. Go ahead.
So anyway.
Yeah. Hey Charles, did you hear about this thing? Sorry.
Hey Charles, did you hear your jackass co-host is leaving you in the lurch in your current job? What?
Okay. In other news, Chrome.
Yes. So So by default, your Mac prevents you, even if you're like sudoing, you can't. I don't think you can modify the kind of the internal root file system without like actually logging in as the admin user and doing some special things. It's meant to be difficult. I've never had to touch it, and I'm running all kinds of things locally, and I've never had to disable that protection even temporarily.
Right.
But so the reason a particular group of people noticed is, I guess there's this long-running thing between Apple and NVIDIA. I don't even want to know what the history is. I guess if you're running Avid and you have a special graphics card, you basically have to have this integrity turned off for things to work.
That's handy.
So enter Google, which for reasons that have not yet become completely clear, this particular Chrome update, I guess it removed the symlink from /var to /private/var, which is like the actual system /var, and it's kind of important. So you do that and then you reboot. It doesn't sound important. So, you reboot, having done that, you basically got no operating system.
No, you've got an operating system, just none of its supporting components.
And I suppose it's, because it's only the symlink that got nerfed. So, you do chroot or something, and you get in there and do things that the Mac user doesn't normally does and put the symlink back, and, you're good.
Good,
and
right.
Of course, I guess Google didn't notice this during testing because they had system integrity protection turned on.
Yeah,
and
right.
Notice whatever this process was supposed to be doing wasn't actually working on their test systems.
Right.
And what moron would disable SIP anyway?
Apparently somebody with an NVIDIA graphics card.
Yeah, so, oops. I don't think it affected anybody where we work, but I certainly saw people.
Yeah,
I certainly saw chatter about it.
I had not heard about it until I was scraping up some news for this, and I kind of passed over it, just like, oh, well, whatever. And then you brought it up when we were preparing for the show. I'm like, yes, we have to cover that. Yeah, so there's instructions in the article here about how to fix it if you happen to know someone who has fallen prey to this. Chances are you don't, because I'm thinking most Mac users leave that protection turned on, because that's part of the reason you run a Mac, because, they are generally a pretty safe platform.
I've run into a lot of instances where SIP has prevented me from doing certain things. Now, I'm more of a power user than the average person.
Yeah, right.
And just it may be more, turning it off may be more common than you think, because every time I go looking for solutions, there's all these wonderfully helpful people who tell you how incredibly useless SIP is and how Mac doesn't know what they're doing, and you should disable it by doing this, and it's the best thing you can possibly do. Your computer will work wonderful. So I hope it's not this way, but look, if you have a Mac and you've disabled SIP, turn it back on. That's kind of important and very useful.
I'm not even sure how to turn it off, and I'm not even going to look it up. Because then I'll be tempted, and then I'll end up nuking VAR.
By the way, this isn't Apple's like preventing me from blah 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 blah. Microsoft does this too. They have I don't know what they call theirs, but it's similar. They do something very similar, and this is sort of becoming a common thing in consumer operating systems. So I wouldn't disable this.
I mean, it
there's ways
should
to work
be
around it if you need to.
Like, there's always going to be power users who want to work around the security framework that's in front of them, but for the average user, the operating system should be protected. I mean, there's just no reason it shouldn't be at this point, because there's so many people who don't care, or don't know and don't care how their machine ticks, and all they want is to be able to use it. And for those people, you want them to just work, and you want them to be safe, and you want, viruses and other nasty things to not be able to prey on them as easily. So, yes, it should be there. Yes, you should leave it on, unless you absolutely know what you're doing. And then you've accepted the risks.
Yeah, and by the way, if something that you're trying to use is blocked by SIP, you can disable SIP, run the thing that you're trying to run, and then turn SIP back on. There's a sequence, you can find it online, but it will allow that one thing that you're trying to run, and then you'll still have the protections of SIP for the rest of the stuff. So
yeah,
for those of you that are trying to do things and are comfortable with the system, like there's a way around this.
Cool. So yeah, Chrome broke some systems that had their security breaches turned off. I really want to know what the hell Chrome was doing deleting the var symlink. Like, how did that happen? How was that a mistake?
So Charles is rapidly speaking, which is actually kind of funny because he's on mute.
Oops. Yeah, well, wrong push to talk key. There's too many apps in the world. I don't know. Did they went too many forward slashes? I mean, that's an easy mistake to make.
I don't know.
I blew away /lib on a system once. So I had.
Did I ever tell you about the time I accidentally deleted a rev manager?
Yes, actually.
That wasn't a path problem. It was literally a single digit mistake in my command. Such good times. Anyway, I think that covers the news for tonight, and we're actually we're done with the show at a decent time point. I don't know what we did wrong.
Hang on, let me go find some more news.
Can we invite
hacker news?
Can we invite Danny on the show quick, just to derail for 45 minutes? Then we'll be at the usual time point.
Who knows? He may be watching. It's possible.
He's just gonna hop in. He's
dial in.
All of a sudden, my phone's gonna start ringing. Hey, I heard you.
Yeah, this is not a name that we want to invoke.
Yeah, right. All right, so I guess thank you folks for watching. Anyone who's watching live, we had a couple people chatting with us tonight as usual. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope the stream was of decent quality. We had a couple problems getting it going tonight, just because of the new complexities that we're still working through, and my old laptop. So yeah, if I had a better laptop, this wouldn't be a problem. I need more memory, guys. That was the problem, random memory. Anyway. Right, so if you want to watch us live, if you don't know where to find us live, go check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/IronSysadmin podcast, and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. It'll let you know when we go live. We do that roughly the second and fourth Thursday of every month, unless we have some weird, life thing come up that prevents us from recording, which almost happened tonight. If you want to chat with us or chat with any other listeners, you can do so via Slack. Go to ironsysadmin.com/Slack, and that'll take you to an invite link where you can join our Slack team. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Just find Iron Sysadmin, and you can subscribe to us wherever you might find podcasts. Oh, I did add us. We had a request on Reddit. By the way, we have a subreddit, which none of us, I think, checks, but I do from time to time. We had a request on Reddit to be added to Spotify, which I have done. So if any of you are Spotify listeners and you would like to go use Spotify to listen to the show, you should be able to do that now. So let me know how it works, because I don't use Spotify, but I see it listed there, and ta-da. And as mentioned earlier in the show, if you want to support the show directly monetarily, you can do so via Patreon, patreon.com/IronSysadmin. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you guys for watching, or thank you for listening if you're listening to the show audio only. And I guess we will catch you next time. You guys want to say goodnight, or are you going to sit there quietly?
I think we're locked trying to figure out who's going to speak first.
Who's going to... Okay, Jason, go. No, wait!
See. Good night, y'all.
I've ruined it.
Everybody.
Good night, everybody.